This is the Cycling Over 60 podcast, Season 2, Episode 11, Octogenarian Odyssey. I'm your host, Tom Butler. I have finished my 10-week program. My hope was to lose 25 pounds over the 10 weeks and get down to 200 pounds in order to be in better shape for this season's challenge. But I failed to achieve that goal. However, as with everything, it is better for me to focus on what I learned rather than what I failed to do. One lesson learned is that I need a different routine to get me to the gym. Over the 10 weeks, I let a busy schedule interfere with getting dressed and heading out to the gym. I'm going to have to revisit some of the ideas that I had in the beginning of the 10 weeks, like laying out my workout clothes first thing in the morning, and I need to have some additional things to motivate me to get to the gym. Right now, this is the biggest weakness in my fitness routine. Another thing I learned is that I get hungry in between meals. And I get really hungry. I need to talk to someone about how much of this is psychological and how much is physiological. I kept thinking that in-between meal hunger would stop over the 10 weeks, and I did see some promising signs in the beginning, but it never truly went away. I also learned that I don't get bored with having the same meal day after day. To be fair, I had a change of meals every Saturday, and I did get a little less focused on meals once I got my new coach, but I typically eat the same lunch every day. Now, I don't really see that this is something I need to do moving forward, but I think it would be good to return to a set of meals that I know will help me lose fat from time to time if needed. It's helpful to have these meals that are set, and I know the amount of calories, the amount of fat, all those things. My goal now is to find more meals that fit into an overall lifestyle adjustment. I did have some serious cravings over the 10 weeks. I mentioned before that pizza is something that I really crave. I need to figure out if I just need to avoid pizza. I think this is kind of an interesting question of, do we just avoid the foods that aren't good for us we crave, just to have the discipline? Or can I work pizza into an overall program in some way? I'm not much in favor of trying to change pizza, like pizza on cauliflower crust, but there might be another way to break the pizza craving by finding some healthier option that also is just as satisfying as pizza. For a couple of weeks now, I have been directed by Coach Lisa on my bike training. So that 10-week bike training program that I had went out the window, and I think this has been for the better. I think that it's been wonderful, and I believe that moving forward, what I'm doing with Coach Lisa is all I need to be the energy output of a program to get down to 200 pounds. I'm going to take a bit now to reevaluate things, but I might come back and do another 10-week program in the future that is tweaked a bit from what I've learned. A huge change for me is that I got a continuous glucose monitor, also called a GCM. I've been wearing it for a couple days now. I'm using a company called NutriSense, and I'm extremely impressed with their app. If you've never seen a GCM, it is a sensor that is stuck to your arm with medical adhesive. It looks kind of intimidating because in the middle of the sensor is a needle. I'm not particularly fond of needles, so it caused a bit of anxiousness for me the first time I put the sensor on. The needle doesn't stay in your arm. It is used to guide a thin, flexible tube in. That is how the device gets the blood glucose reading. I was ready for a slight sting the first time I used the sensor applicator, but I didn't feel anything at all. In fact, I had to take the first sensor off and apply a different one, and pulling off the adhesive was way worse than applying the sensor. Having the sensor is a real game changer. While I have seen myself as pre-diabetic in the past, I've never measured my blood glucose in a way that I would see spikes before. Seeing that data, I think I have to consider myself now as a diabetic. I've never been diagnosed as diabetic. It's going to be really interesting to hear from my doctor once he sees the data I'm getting from the GCM. The NutriSense app also has a very useful meal analysis function. In addition to the great blood glucose monitoring, I'm also getting very detailed information on what I'm eating. For me, it made sense to make a 3-month commitment to NutriSense. That means it will cost me $300 a month. So obviously it's an investment. It is too bad that you have to have a diabetes diagnosis to get insurance to pay for it. There are tens of thousands of people in the U.S. that are in my same situation. If CGMs were made readily available for people, healthcare providers could have so much valuable information in order to give advice about managing blood sugar. Of course, and it is this way for me for sure, the information is only valuable if I use it to make changes. That will be my challenge going forward. I hope to have someone from NutriSense come on the podcast down the road as I learn more and can ask some informed questions, because I do think this is going to be really valuable as I go forward, specifically about managing my weight and also just good blood glucose management down the road. Stay tuned as I have more time with the GCM and learn how to effectively use the data to analyze my situation. When Bob Fletcher reached out and told me about the journey he is now on, I was very excited that he wanted to be on the Cycling Over 60 podcast. At age 81, Bob is reaching the end of a 2-part ride that started in North Pole, Alaska, and is finishing in Argentina. He really represents the Cycling Over 60 mindset. Here is our conversation. What an awesome opportunity I have right now to welcome Bob Fletcher to the Cycling Over 60 podcast. Thanks for joining me, Bob.
Oh, I'm so excited to be here with you. Thanks for asking me.
Yeah. Someone reached out to you, I think, and told you about the podcast, and then you reached out, and I felt really awesome to have this opportunity. I'm going to let you talk about what you have going on rather than me try to explain it. But I just want to say that you are on an epic journey. And I believe right now you're in part 2 of this epic journey. So can you talk a little bit about that journey and the 2 parts of it?
Sure. As you know, I'm 81 years old. And back when I was 79, I started thinking about what will I do to celebrate my 80th birthday? And I toyed with a lot of ideas. And what I decided was I didn't really need to do presents and cake and sing happy birthday type of thing, as I've done for many years, because I never expected to make it to 80. So I thought I should celebrate in some way. I've always been a person that has traveled and been cycling pretty well all my life since I got my first bike at about 5 years of age. And I've cycled in 24 different countries, I believe now. So I got thinking, what will I do for the birthday that will make it something special? And I toyed with a number of ideas. One was to return to Spain and do my third Camino de Santiago on horseback. And then since I'd never been on a horse, I rejected that very quickly. And then I thought about doing something with the Amazon River. I'd only been there to spend a day looking at it, and I thought maybe there was something that I could do. But my friend from Peru said, you know, if you're going on the Amazon, you're going to have to eat monkey brains and snakes and things like that. So I rejected that idea almost as quickly.
Okay.
And then I was watching a series on Apple Television with Ewan McGregor and Charlie Borman. Their first one was Long Way Around. They went by motorcycle around the world. Next one was Long Way Down, from the tip of Scotland to the bottom of Africa, Cape Town. And the third one was Long Way Up on electric motorcycles from bottom of Argentina to Los Angeles. And at that point in time, I said to Gloria, my wife, that's it. That's what I'm going to do. She said, what? I said, I'm going to ride an electric bicycle from the tip of, from North Pole, Alaska, down to Panama. And the second part will be from Cartagena in Colombia down to the bottom of Argentina. So that's how I got the idea to do what I'm doing. And we completed the first part of it, North Pole, Alaska to Panama City, Panama. We set a Guinness's World Records for the longest electric bike ride at that time. And then I took 6 months off to wait for the seasons to change in South America, because I didn't want to be in the high Andes in the middle of winter in Argentina, Chile, Bolivia. We started July 4th in Alaska in 2022, Independence Day for you and your listeners. And then we started July 4th, 1 year later in Cartagena on Independence Day. And we've been cycling for the last 3 months now, and we're in Argentina.
It sounds like you're not quite, even though you're in Argentina, you're not quite done with your trip. Did I understand it right that you're going to Chile and then back to Argentina?
That's correct. We're in northern Argentina, and in a few weeks we'll cross into Chile and Santiago, continue down the Pacific coast of Chile, and then cross back into Argentina for Patagonia and Terra del Fuego. And we'll end up approximately middle of December. We'll complete this portion of the Odyssey.
It is epic. I don't think there's another word for it, and again, to say, okay, I could have birthday cake and a party or set a world record for the amount on an electric e-bike. That's quite a jump. You talked about your first experience riding a bike when you were 5 years old. And
right.
I'm wondering if you would talk a bit about like your youth and what role bikes had for you in your youth.
Well, going back to some of those early memories, I remember once before the bike, I had a little red wagon and I used to push it as fast as I could down the sidewalk. And I remember taking a corner too sharply, hitting a fire hydrant and breaking the front wheels off of it. And my father getting mad at me for being careless with my wagon. And then I remember getting a bicycle on my 5th birthday. I must have been riding it because I took off on it very quickly. And I came to a T-corner. And of course, I didn't know how to put the brakes on. It was one where you pedal backwards to put the brakes on. Went across the T-corner, slammed into a fence. And I remember getting heck from my father again for not taking care of my bicycle as I got back on road home, scratched up from road rash. And I guess I've been crashing ever since on my bicycles for a number of years. Bicycles have always been part of my life, always having it. I remember riding a bike and in the new community that we were living in, and the streets were muddy and getting the fender and the tires all clogged up with mud and not being able to ride it, to delivering papers on a bicycle, getting my first 3-speed bike and being able to go further and faster than anything. And over the years, the bike has always been there, but I've done other things as well, other athletic things like running and triathlons. And I've also gotten badly out of shape as, gotten a lot fatter and had to lose the weight again by getting back on the bicycle. So it's been part of the life, the bicycle. And now that I'm older, it seems to be the main thing right now is to do these odysseys that I'm on.
Now, you're from Alberta.
Yes.
And I'm wondering about the decision to go to North Pole, Alaska, which is just a bit outside of Fairbanks, Alaska.
Right.
How did you choose North Pole?
I didn't really. I did a ride in 2015 from Anchorage, Alaska to Mexico City, which was my largest ride up to that point in time, or up to Fairbanks. So I thought I'll start in Fairbanks. And then one of my Facebook friends suggested that maybe you're up that far, you're going to be down in Panama around Christmas time. Maybe we should work together and do Christmas presents for children in Panama. So I thought that was a good idea since the Odyssey was lacking that give back to situations. How can I contribute a bit on this thing? And then she suggested that maybe I shouldn't start in Fairbanks, that North Pole, Alaska would be more appropriate for Christmas gifts. And that's the home of Santa Claus and his reindeer, and the world's largest statue of Santa Claus is there. And in North Pole, Alaska, there is a North Pole that was dropped in the real North Pole to commemorate something. And over the years, it got removed, and somebody found it in a junkyard and took it to North Pole, Alaska. And that's where we started, right at the North Pole. That was in North Pole, Alaska. And then as we progressed, Nina, my friend in Panama, Facebook friend in Panama, suggested that maybe the appropriate thing rather than toys and Christmas gifts would be to buy bicycles. So we ended up tying in North Pole, Alaska with Christmas and with the purchase of 31 bicycles for children in a small rural town in Panama. And it was one of the special days when we gave these bicycles out at the school. They had a raffle and the children won the bicycles. And it was something special about the whole trip was the presentation to these children and the bicycles, and hopefully maybe I've encouraged some of them to ride a bicycle, become a future Tour de France winner or a participant that way. And that's how we came about with North Pole Alaska and Bicycles for Presents.
That's a fantastic focus. I just think of that image of being there and seeing them receive that bicycle. That must have been special. Must have been really a special part of it.
It was a ceremony, and the staff were there, and I was an educator for 30 years, so I got to play principal again for 20 minutes in front of the children and talk to them, and they had questions like, "Oh, did I meet Santa Claus?" and things like that, and "Will you take me to meet him?" And it was a special moment, and the children were chosen by the staff who were the poorest children and who had to walk the farthest to school each day. So it wasn't a raffle for everybody in the school. It was a raffle for 50 children.
Awesome. Now, you are not alone on the trip. Can you talk about your crew?
Oh, I got a fantastic crew. The first section, Octo Odyssey 1.0, I had an international crew. I advertised on Pan American Facebook group because I needed some help. I ended up with a young lady from Denmark, another young lady from Greece, a lady from Spanish-speaking lady, Costa Rica, who's my sister-in-law, and fellow Wayne Grover, who I've ridden with a number of times, participated with me, and he rode most of the way with me to accompany me on the bike and to be a witness for Guinness's World Record. And then I had a young man, Kyle, from United States, who did our video work with cameras and drones and things like that. So it was an international group, 3 young people and a couple of older guys. And the team was so very helpful in getting me to Panama City. We had a van, so it was a supported trip. We towed a tent trailer for accommodation while we were in the north, where we had to do some wild camping, bush camping as well. It was quite an experience with that team. And then for the second part, Octogenarian 2.0, I decided to name it like that. I thought if Apple could number all their phones over the years, I could certainly number the octogenarian sections. So 2.0, we did it a little bit differently because my wife, Gloria, said, "I don't mind you going on adventures, but there's no more adventures without me." So she has joined us as the sort of manager, the financial CEO of the trip. My sister-in-law is back again. She's the official driver and official Spanish-speaking person when we get to the borders and getting across the borders easily. Gloria's daughter, my stepdaughter, has joined us as second driver and media person. And for Octogenarian Odyssey 2.0, I thought, well, I'll invite friends who wish to ride with me to help finance the trip as well. So we've had 2 riders through Colombia with me, and then one went home to Florida, and then 2 more joined me through Ecuador and Peru. And right now we have a lady from Edmonton who's been with us from Quito, Ecuador, and is going all the way to Santiago, Chile. And then I have 2 more ladies joining us for the Chilean part, and then I'm all by myself in Argentina. I couldn't do it without the support. I'm not doing it bike packing where I carry my tent and foods and everything else like the other people we meet on the road, which I call road warriors. I'm fully supported. We stay in hotels, we eat in restaurants. So the life on the road is not the hardest situation that it could be, not like the other road warriors, bike packers are doing. So my teams are being great.
The supplies and everything that you have, the equipment that you have in the van, did you learn quite a bit from part 1 to part 2, or did you feel from other things that you'd done that you knew pretty much what to take, or did you have some advice on that? How did you decide what you needed to have in the van?
Originally, we started was how to keep the bikes, electric bikes, fully charged. So up north in part 1, I installed an inverter in the van, a 2000 watt inverter that would take the 12-volt battery and turn it into 110 so I could charge the batteries while we traveled. I also had a generator all through our sponsors, Evelo Bicycles, helped with that. And then a tent trailer. I just put together a list of things that I thought we might need if we get stuck in a mud hole, if we have problems with the batteries, etc. As it turned out, we didn't have a lot of bad experiences. For the second part, I changed the makeup of the teams. I didn't take the tent trailer. I abandoned that in Costa Rica, gave it to the government of Costa Rica to do whatever they wanted to do with it. I added more rest days so that when we hit major cities that we had 2 full days there to explore the cities rather than just the one day. We made sure that we had accommodation just before any border crossing so that we weren't crossing the border late afternoon and then having to ride in the dark once we got through, because border crossings can take us up to 3 or 4 hours depending on the border. So minor changes like that. The distance each day, we try and make it average somewhere around 110 kilometers per day is the average. But our shortest day so far, I think, has been 39 kilometers, and our longest day is about 150. That's about the only changes I made for part 2.
Did you face any pressure from friends or family who thought that this was too much to take on?
No. Partly because I've been an adventure cyclist for a while, and I've cycled in different countries in Asia and Europe and around. My daughter and family, her family, were very supportive. Yes, Dad, please get out and do that. Let's not sit at home on the couch and watch television and do those things. So very supportive. A few friends have thought that maybe I'm a little wacko, but they were more concerned about riding through strange countries and the danger of riding in those countries. And part of the mission that I wanted to portray in part 1 was that Central America is not a place of, well, it is a place of cartels and things, but it is not a dangerous place as portrayed by the media. At no point in time were we ever in any danger. I was more afraid of the bears in Alaska and the Yukon than I was traveling through Central America at any time. So I wanted to show Central America, Latin America as a place to visit and get out of the all-inclusive beachfront resorts and travel to some of the other tourist places, the colonial cities, the magic cities, and see some of the culture and the people, particularly in Mexico, as well as the rest of Central America.
Wonderful. Tell us about your e-bike setup. Kind of why did you go with what you went with, and what are you carrying on it? What were the technical specs that you felt like you needed?
I was not new to e-bikes. I live in Costa Rica, and before COVID, I did a number of Costa Rican bicycle tours for people, family, and friends as sort of a semi-business. And then early on, a few people said, "Do you have e-bikes?" So I bought 2 lesser quality e-bikes, not very expensive, that I rented out to people coming down that couldn't keep up with their partner, or they had a medical issue or something. And I rode them a little bit, but I always kept returning to my road bike or mountain bike. Then I had a severe crash. I broke my hip and a few ribs and knocked myself out. And I had planned a trip in Germany, and I felt that by the time I recovered, I was not in shape. So I rented an e-bike in Germany and carried out a 2-week trip through Germany. And then I was sort of hooked on e-bikes after that, and I've been riding them ever since. So for this trip, I wanted one with decent components, one with a mid-drive rather than a rear motor. I wanted one with a little wider tires. I wanted something that had 500 to 750 watt motor just to make the mountains a little bit easier to get up. And I needed a second battery system so I could get through a day with 2 batteries, get in maybe 100 miles, 160 kilometers without much problem. And then I needed the equipment to charge it, as I mentioned before, especially in the north. When we're in hotels or campgrounds, I could plug in and charge off of the outlets that were there. I was very happy in that Velo heard of my Odyssey, and they approached me and to see what I would needed. And we got along, and they suggested that I ride the Velo Atlas. Velo is a company out of Seattle, and they've just been excellent. The bike has now covered almost 25,000 kilometers, I think. We're still going. The tires are still the same on it.
Wow.
Evelo and the choice of that bike, well, they chose the bike out of what they're selling, and I think they wanted to demonstrate that this bike was a good bike for tours and doing what I'm doing. I've been very happy with Evelo and their support in both parts of the trip, part one and part two.
It is quite a test for their tech. So I imagine they're thrilled to see that.
Well, I think I've put it, if I quite often think I'm a test pilot trying out a new, airplane or something, but I've put it through climbing the highest mountains up to 14,000 feet. I've ridden it on the salt flats of Bolivia. I've ridden it through rain. I've been through cold weather, like around 1 or 2 degrees Celsius, through sand, everything. It's been tested in almost every condition I think you could test it in. It's proven itself. So if somebody was going to buy it in the United States and ride it on the roads in the United States, it's been tested on the roughest, muddiest, dirtiest, salty roads, speed bumps, potholes, things like that. Things you would never find riding in the United States.
Right. Yeah, it can probably handle a bike trail if it's handled all that. So...
The bike trail would be very smooth compared to all the speed bumps in Mexico, for instance.
Right. How about other sponsors? What would you say about other sponsors that you have?
For the first part, Airbnb sponsored us, so we had almost half of our accommodation was in Airbnbs. Great sponsor. We had some mansions we stayed in particular in Mexico. We've had beachfront accommodation, and it's so nice to be in a place like Airbnb where you can get up in the morning and cook your own breakfast and not have to worry about going to a restaurant or something. Or camping, you can do your laundry. So Airbnbs were great. In Canada, we had the Bank of Montreal support us. We've got Cyclometer. It was a great app for anybody to use. You can use it for free or you can upgrade. It can give you every information you need about riding, competition. Rafa Sporting Goods gave us the clothes and everything. Sponsors have been great. Redshift seat posts for the second one. One of the things I learned in the first was the rough roads and the bumps and the potholes. I needed a suspension seat post to help. So Redshift came through and gave us their seat posts, and it's a lot more comfortable riding on the rough roads
Nice.
with that. So lots of excellent sponsors. From Swagman Bike Racks provided our racks and our storage on the roof and things like that for us. So can't say enough about the sponsors and the quality of the material.
And in the bikes that you gave away, where did those come from?
They were bought locally. Roger and Nina are expats from Alaska, and they live in a small town just over the border in Panama with a number of other expats on the beaches there. And so what I did as money came in, I sent the money to them by PayPal, and then Roger went and bought from the local hardware store mountain bikes. They weren't expensive bikes, probably about $150. He then took them home and readjusted them and everything and made sure they were safe. And then when the day came, his friends came in pickup trucks and took the bikes to the school. They were a big help in carrying out that project. And I think we're going to do the same for some children in Peru and Bolivia if we can raise some money on this go around. I'm trying to set that up right now and maybe have some more donations this Christmas. Particularly in Bolivia, we got stopped at a protest about a week ago, and they wouldn't let any traffic through. They closed the road by dumping a truckload of sand, putting big rocks on the road, and putting signs up. And they were protesting the lack of medical care in their community. they wouldn't let us through. So we sat there for 3 or 4 hours, and Gloria was negotiating with the people that were in charge, trying to get us through so we could complete our ride that day. And they weren't going to let us through. You can come back at whatever time, 2 o'clock in the morning when we opened the road. And I was almost giving up. And then Gloria said, well, this is too bad because Bob is sending out a message that children should get off the television and the phones and computers and get outside and do exercise or bicycle. And that in Panama, we gave away these 31 bikes. Well, as soon as she mentioned that to the leader of the women there, everything changed. And, oh, you're not doing this for profit. And not, no, we're raising, funds. And okay, they had a meeting. They opened the gates and sort of made a promise. Could you at least send one bike back to Bolivia for one of our children? So we made that promise, and we're going to carry that out.
I'm sure you had envisioned parts of the trip as you were planning, and I'm curious about what are some of the experiences that exceeded your expectations?
Well, first of all, because we did Anchorage to Mexico City in the past, I wanted to pick a different route wherever possible. And Alaska and Yukon pretty well only got one road, so you got to ride that again. So I chose to head over to the Pacific coast rather going down through Alberta and then into Montana, Wyoming, and Arizona and down that way and down the Baja. So we chose the Pacific. And the expectation of the Pacific coast was one I'd had on my bucket list for a while. And I got to say, the Pacific coast of the United States is just awesome to ride. The Highway 101 down the coast is every day there's a different view of the ocean and everything. It was one of the highlights that exceeded my expectations. Then when we got into Mexico, we again exceeded expectations in that we were so welcomed by the Mexican people that our day was full of people stopping us along the way, wanting to take a picture. Because I had on the back of the bike, in that case, Alaska to Panama, and they wanted to take a picture. They gave us money, they gave us food, they gave us water, they gave us marijuana, they gave us tequila, whatever they had, they were welcome. So happy to see us riding through their communities, and they were sharing whatever they had with us. And the police exceeded the expectations in Mexico. They helped us almost every day. They would, of course, stop us and ask us what's happening. And when they found out what was happening, they provided escorts. So we're safe in the traffic. They bought us lunch. I even slept one night in a southern Mexican police station in the commander's office on his bed because there was no hotel spaces in that town. So those were expectations I never thought of that would happen. Was the kindness of the Mexican people, people everywhere, but especially the Mexicans.
The world record, did you start out with that as a goal? When did you start thinking about getting that record?
It wasn't part of the plan at all. I ride my bike, let's say 5 times a week, and I go out for a couple hours in the morning, and I get a lot of good ideas when I'm riding my bicycle, but usually I've forgotten them by the time I get home. I can't remember what the idea was that I thought of. But one day I'm riding my bike. I thought, I wonder what the oldest guy is that's ever done anything on a bicycle. So that day I remembered it. I went home, and this was well into the planning, probably 3 or 4 months into the planning. And I looked through Guinness's Book of Records, and I didn't spot anything other than the longest electric bicycle ride was there. And I thought, well, I'm going to surpass that. I'll apply for the record. And I sent the application in, and it took about 3 or 4 months. And finally, they sent back an approval saying, yes, you can do that. We'll permit that. And it became at times an albatross around my neck, because we had to keep moving all the time. You couldn't stop and say, well, the weather's bad, let's throw the stuff on the back of the car and drive to good weather. You had to ride through it all all the time and carry out their rules and regulations. I had to ride the same bike every day. I had to keep going in pretty well a straight line. If in some cases, there was one case where we came up 35 kilometers short that day. We put the bike in the car, drove to our accommodation. The next morning, we drove back to where we had stopped the night before and started riding from there. So that was a legal part, but it also motivated me to keep going and keep moving, keep on schedule.
So, what has been the most challenging part of your journey?
I'm not sure. Some of the climbs, especially here in South America, in Colombia, it was we were climbing all the time. In the one country of Colombia, we climb over half. I think it's 60% of the total climbing for all of South America is just in the one country.
Wow.
So one day we had a 76-kilometer uphill climb. It's a beautiful country, and the mountains are high, and they're covered in green with waterfalls and rivers and things. So it's an awesome country to ride in. But the challenge of the mountains was quite a bit. Some days you don't feel like, oh my God, I got to get up and do this again today. But it's no different than going to work. I say, I have work to do. I got to get up at 7 and go to work for 8 or 9 hours. And then, we stop for coffee break, we stop for lunch, and okay, it's dinner time and accommodation. Then we do it all again for another day. We take a non-riding day approximately once a week. Talking to you today, I'm on a non-riding day. We rode in yesterday. Today, nothing. And tomorrow we'll ride out.
How about injuries?
Injury on the first part, 0. This part 2, I was going through a long tunnel that had no lights, no way of seeing the road other than my little headlight on my bike and a red taillight. And I was moving pretty fast. I felt the traffic behind me, and I went to move over just to ride closer to the edge. And I hit a curb that I didn't know was there, and I went flying over the handlebars and slammed into the wall. I fractured my wrist and cracked 2 ribs, and I was lucky. That was the only injury that I had suffered the whole way, and I should have just stayed in the middle of the lane and said, what the heck, the cars can wait till I get through this tunnel. So the second tunnel that we came upon, I had to overcome my fear of riding through tunnels, and I put the van behind me with the headlights and the flashers on, and that's how I ride through the tunnels now. And the tunnels so far have been few, and there's no lights where, say, in California through the tunnels, you hit a button before you go in, and it puts a flashing light up on the outside the tunnel that says cyclists in the tunnel, slow down. Nothing like that down here. So that's the only injury that I had, and I was lucky, very lucky on that one.
I imagine that biking is such a more intimate way of experiencing the environment. I don't know that intimate is the exact word, but how would you contrast moving through at the pace of biking versus flying by in a car?
Certainly, you notice more things. You notice the aromas, the sounds of birds, the heat of the sun on your back, those kinds of things with the environment. You notice the litter and the garbage that is thrown in the ditches. And a couple of the countries has just been disgusting the amount of garbage that's in the ditch and construction materials. And it's just a shame that people are doing that. First thing we noticed coming into Argentina was that it got a lot cleaner. We noticed garbage collection sites along the way that we hadn't noticed in a couple of the other countries in South America or in Central America. Your senses are alive all the time because your ears are listening for traffic, what's coming behind you. You're viewing the road, looking for potholes or anything, and you're also looking at llamas on the side of the road, sheep, goats, cows, things like that, sometimes in the middle of the road. So it's relaxing, but it isn't relaxing. when you get to in the northern Canada and the big logging trucks coming by you, and you can reach out your hand and almost touch the truck, and you can smell the cedar and the pine and everything as it comes by. Yesterday, we rode in on about a 40K, 4 meter wide highway, if you could call it that. 4 meters is about 14 feet, I think. And I'm the only one there. There's no traffic or anything. It's like riding on a bike path through the mountains. And then there's no traffic. You're just enjoying all your senses that are bringing the environment into play. And you're thinking, wow, this is so great. Mother Nature has created these awesome mountains covered in trees and little streams. And I don't think you get that in the car going at 120 kilometers an hour down the road.
Would you say that this is an opportunity even at 80 plus to learn something about yourself? Has this taught you anything about yourself?
It's taught me that I like media coverage. I've never had that in my life, but in part one, there was a lot of TV interviews, newspaper reporters, things like that. And I learned I like the attention. My ego got a little large. And I also learned that I've got the ability to sit on a bicycle seat for many days at a time. And I'm not a great athlete by any sense of imagination, but I do seem to have a little bit of, what would you call it, ability to sit and suffer sitting on a bicycle seat for long periods of time. We met a young couple a week or so ago. They were cycling down to the bottom of Argentina, and they were from Switzerland. And he had 4 different bicycle seats he brought with him because he just could not sit on a bicycle seat for a long period of time. So he was always shifting different seats around. And when he looked at the seat on my bike that has been there for the 25,000 kilometers, it's all cracked and ripped and stuff like that now, just from usage and the sun. And just haven't changed it because I don't have a problem. So I'm not sure that's a valuable thing to learn, but I did learn that.
Yeah, I don't know. I think there is an element of being able to hang in there, that is a valuable thing.
There is definitely that element because at times the crew will say, come on, and it's so cold and windy and rainy, put the car in the back. No, I'm afraid that I'm here to cycle, not ride in the car. You got to tough it out at times when the going gets tough, the tough gets going.
Yeah. What advice would you give to someone considering a similar long distance e-bike journey?
Well, first of all, do it if you're considering it. If you haven't done it before, maybe you should start with a smaller one. I've spent a lot of time, and my friends have, going with tour companies, where they handle your luggage and they provide meals and things like that. You might want to start with something along those lines before heading out on your own. A Facebook friend of mine, Gustav from Europe, he started 1 month ahead of me in Alaska, and he kept going all the way down. So he basically has the record for riding an e-bike all the way from North America to South America, 10 years younger than me. But he was well prepared, and he carried 3 batteries, and he camped along the way, bike packing with no support. So anybody can get out and do it. You do need to be in shape. I don't think you can just jump on a bike and decide you're going to ride 2,000 or 3,000 miles without having some experience of riding some long distances. So start slowly, start with a week, or try somebody like Venture Cyclist, a great outfit out of Montana that promotes biking, and they have great tours. And start with something small and work your way up. If you've done a lot, then sure, go for it. Electric bike or non-electric bike.
What would you say to people in their 60s or 50s about taking on a physical challenge?
First of all, life doesn't end at retirement. One of the few things I've noticed over the years is that usually I'm the oldest when I go on an organized bike trip. And in a number of cases, people have said to me, geez, Bob, you're 73 and I'm 63. Gee, thank you. Now I know I can keep riding after retirement, that I can keep riding in my old age. And those comments have been made to me on almost every organized trip I've been on, that they've recognized that they can keep doing it. So for people 50 and 60, it doesn't have to be cycling. They could be doing some other sport, I guess. But cycling is one where there's no pressure on your knees and things. So it's also an easy sport because you're not putting weight on it like you are on running and that type of exercise. So if you're 50 or 60, you've got another 30 years of seeing the world and enjoying life. And let's get out and get doing it. Let's trade the sofa for a bicycle seat.
I love it. What does the rest of your journey look like from here?
It appears that Argentina and Chile is more European than the rest of South America. Certainly, our few days here in Argentina, it's a change of environment with things like nice strip malls, restaurants that are full of wine. Last night we went to dinner and I asked the fellow, I need a really good bottle of wine. What do you recommend? He said, what price range were you thinking? I said, well, I don't know. What prices have you got? And he said, well, here's a very good one for 7,200 pesos. So quick conversion, that's $9 for a really top Cabernet Sauvignon, excellent wine. And that was one of his more expensive wines. So we're looking forward to Mendoza, the wine growing capital of Argentina. Then we move into Chile and the Chilean wines. We think it's going to be more modern than the other countries. And then I'm looking really forward to Patagonia and Terra del Fuego and the mountains and the scenic areas in that area.
Will that be your biggest climbing?
No, our biggest climbing was in Colombia and in Peru, Bolivia. We were in Bolivia for about 3 weeks, and we were at elevation of 11,000 feet to 14,000 feet the whole time. And it was difficult when you're walking up a hill or climbing stairs, you're huffing and puffing. We finally got accustomed to it, and then we're back down to, I think, 1,000 meters now, so 3,000 feet, 3,500 feet. So no, there won't be a lot of climbing. What's going to be a problem, I think, is we're going to get a lot of wind coming up off the Cape of Horn, I guess, and we're going to get a lot of wind, and we're going to get more roads that are gravel roads, rough roads, I think, in the latter part of Argentina.
And then do you know how much longer before you wrap up?
Yeah, our schedule is December the 11th. We're on schedule now, so it'll be very close to that. The last month, I'm riding by myself, so I don't have to keep to the schedule. Right now, I have riding partners, and for instance, Bernice here has an air flight out of Santiago. We have to get her there on time. Then the other ladies come in, and then we got to meet their flight, and then when they exit 3 weeks later, we have to have them at their airport for departure. After that, I'm kind of free to, this is a nice place. I think we'll go hiking in the mountains here today or something like that, and I can rearrange the schedule. Want to be back in Canada, though, for Christmas.
You have a book coming out. Can you talk about the book a bit?
Oh, the book is one of the most frustrating things that I did on this trip. I got popped into doing it. I'm not a writer. I'm a reluctant writer. But everybody said, we are living vicariously through you. You should write a book, etc., etc. So, my head got bigger and the ego took over. Okay, I'll write a book. So I did it with a ghostwriter. And every day I dictate experiences and happenings of the day. And I send her off a voice recording. And then she put it into a book. It ended up to be much longer than I thought. It's 404 pages. And then I sent it off to the publisher. Well, the publisher's had it now since May, and it's still not out. The book is the story of the trip, from a little bit in the beginning about me and my history of writing, and then document the highlights, the lowlights, the problems, unexpected happiness, like Oaxaca and the Day of the Dead. What a fantastic celebration in Mexico. And we lived through that for the 2 weeks that we're in that state. It was just a wonderful experience. So I hope I can contribute not just the story, but also some ideas, thoughts about the migrants that we met along the way that are on, trying to get to your country. Stories like that appear. So if people have a chance, and I'm sure it's going to be on Amazon very soon, it's titled Octogenarian Odyssey, Trading the Sofa for a Bicycle Seat. So if your listeners can find it, all the great, all the better.
There is this message, trading the sofa for the bike. And can you talk a little bit more about that message for both younger people and for older people?
One of the things that I didn't expect was the number of younger people that stop us and ask us what we're doing and are really surprised at, well, a person my age doing it, but the distance covered. And so many young people have wanted to get in the picture, have their picture taken. In fact, just yesterday, a young girl, we stopped for lunch in a town here in Argentina, and she saw the sign on the back of the bike, and she thought that was quite cool and wanted her picture taken with us. So at that time, I said, a little chat about, in this case, using an interpreter, but yeah, get a bike, let's get out and get riding, Don't spend your life with the computer. Get out to see the world. You'll learn about the world. I think if people are traveling and visiting different countries, they'll change their perspective on or get a wider viewpoint of what other countries are like and what the people are like. And some of the problems that we have with racism and bigotry and things, to me, you can't travel and not dispel some of the stereotypes and just get rid of racism, bigotry. So encouraging everybody to get out, and it doesn't have to be on a bike. It can be whatever form. Get out and see the world.
This has been an epic journey. I mean, there's no other way to describe it. Do you have thoughts of doing something else in the future? Is it going to be, let's get this done and I'm not going to think about the next journey? How's that process?
The process is we're planning the next Octo Odyssey 3.0. Right now, a few things are going around. When we get there, we're going to park the car and the bicycles, I think, in the bottom of Argentina, and then disappear for a couple of months to do some stuff with the book, get it out and get some publicity for that. Then we're going back to Argentina. We're going to ride up the Atlantic side to Buenos Aires and Uruguay. I want to see Iguazu Falls. I've seen Victoria Falls and Niagara. I might as well complete the big three, and maybe over into Brazil. And then I'm thinking the next one will be a 5-month journey through Europe. Ship the vehicle and the bikes over by boat from maybe Uruguay to someplace in Europe. A couple of problems there is you can only get a 90-day visa for Europe, and the bicycles that we have are not legal in Europe. They can only be category 1, 23 kilometers an hour. So I don't know whether that'll be a problem. If that doesn't happen, then 2 other choices. Continue riding up the east side of South America through Brazil and up to Venezuela and ship the car back to Panama and then make our way back to Canada that way, or ship it over to Florida and go back that way. So I'm not sure which one is happening. Europe, I'm leaning towards for the next adventure.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing more about it. How can people follow you? How can people learn more, be kind of alerted to when the book is coming out, those kinds of things?
The best place to get the best stories is on Facebook. And to find me on Facebook, it is www.facebook.com/B&B Travel. Or they can do a search for Robert Fletcher. Unfortunately, there's a few hundred of us, so it'll take a while to find that, but they can recognize it because the Guinness Book of Records certificate is the profile picture they can hunt for. That's the best way to get sort of day by day ideas. Instagram is Octo Odyssey. That'll give you more reels and visuals type of stories on Instagram than what you might get on Facebook, but you don't get all the text of what happened each day. I have a website which is quite full of different articles, and I also post every day's Facebook there, but we're about 2 months behind on posting the Facebook details. It's at octoodyssey.com. Anyway, and if they want a book, certainly message me and I'll put them on my list of who to notify. I've got a few hundred people that are waiting for me to say, okay, it's now available on Amazon as an ebook or a soft cover. It is a large book, 404 pages and about 100 colored photographs. We are writing the second book, and it's going to be much shorter. It's called Octogenarian Odyssey 2.0. I Can't Stop Pedaling. That'll be another year from now for that one.
Well, I will make sure and put those links in the show notes for anybody listening, and I'm looking forward to it. And I just so appreciate you taking the time out of your rest day here to jump on the podcast. This has been great. I just think what you're doing, everything from just taking this on to, the bikes that you gave away, and to just sharing with people the message that these are places to not be afraid of. These are places to go visit. There's different cultures and different experiences to have, and to get out and see Central America and South America. I think what you're doing is all fantastic.
Well, thank you so much for thinking that it's interesting and inviting me to be on your podcast. I've enjoyed it. Maybe we'll talk again when we're in 3.0.
That would be perfect. Well, good luck on the rest of this journey and all the journeys in the future.
Okay, thank you. And good luck with everything up. You're in Seattle, are you?
That's correct. Just outside of Seattle. Yeah.
We bypassed Seattle on this trip. We Bellingham, and then we cut across took the ferries over, heading towards the coast. Washington State's a great place.
Yeah. All right. Well, we will talk again later.
Okay. Thank you. And we'll talk to you again. Bye.
Bye now. Bob mentioned being the oldest person on organized rides. It sounds like it has been that way for years. So he has had the opportunity to inspire many people with his mini biking adventures. And now I am one of them. Hearing his story, I feel like I have enough time to get in shape to do something really epic like he's doing. I don't think Alaska to Argentina epic, but something relatively big. I had come to believe that I wouldn't ever do the Seattle to Portland, and now that is behind me. So I look forward to finding what big ride I can take on in the future. What about you? What is something that you thought you would never do and now is behind you? Or maybe it's something that you are currently training for. Reach out to me through email or message me on Instagram. You can find both links in the show notes. This week, I did the first ride of the fall where I got really wet and muddy. It is that time of year again. I hope you are getting out and about on your bike, even though it might mean getting wet. And I wish you all the best on either wet rides or dry rides, whether they be epic like Bob's or a trip to the coffee shop. And remember, age is just a gear change.